Hello, I'm Catherine Sines, the president of the Rotary Club of Hudson. Rotary is a professional organization of a group of men and women who support Rotary International. We also join together by a common interest of service to our Hudson community, and we have a sincere desire to give back. We meet weekly on Wednesdays at Laurel Lake Retirement Community, 200 Laurel Lake Drive, in their dining room. We meet from 7:30 to 8:30 and would like to invite you to join us. For more information about Rotary, go to www.rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the following excerpts from one of our recent meetings and consider joining us on Wednesday morning.
Good morning, Rotarians. Yes. Good morning, Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. Our invocation this morning is by Bill Woldridge.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning. Good morning.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for all that you do for us and all that you give us. This beautiful day, a great country to live in, the wonderful town of Hudson, a great school system for our youth, and very importantly, opportunities for us to serve. And finally, thank you for this meal today that will nourish our bodies to serve in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bill. And to lead us in the pledge and four-way test this morning, Glenn Sandler.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Take the face flag and join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn our attention to four-way test. First.
Is it the truth?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And to lead us in song, Chris Parker.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning.
Okay, now that we're done with the Cavs for the season, we're focusing on the Indians. And they won yesterday, so we're gonna...
No, they didn't.
Oh!
Okay, so we'll go with
Recheck with Siri, okay? She said they won 5-1. All right, because they didn't win and they need a little bit of help.
There you go.
Take me out to the ball game.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get back. So it's root for the Indians. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Yeah.
Go try.
And now our president, Catherine Sines.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning. Good morning.
And I'm smiling because, not sorry, Evan, but this is my last month of being the president. Sad, maybe a little, but I'm real happy that I only have one more meeting to run. Sorry. We have several announcements this morning. We don't have any visitors, and we have a good crowd. Thanks everybody for coming. And we have several announcements. So first, I want to tell everyone there's a board of directors meeting, the last one of my presidency, this morning, following this meeting. And I want to make a special thank you for everybody who helped move the stuff out of the Howard Hanna basement on Saturday. We did it in the rain, but we got it all done. I really appreciate it. Pat Shearer for showing up. Brad Nelson, we got stuff moved out of the bikes, taken where they needed to go, and we moved everything into where it needs to go. So I thank you for that. That's been a couple months now working on it. I thank you for that. Rich Warfield asked if you could please speak this morning for a few minutes.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Oh, Andy.
Don't trip.
Hi, Andy.
Don't trip. Don't trip.
Got distracted there, didn't you?
Eddie Marshall, anybody didn't see you, welcome back. King Matt, thank you for the people that showed up. Brad Nelson surprised us, took over. He was our lead broom swinger. He did a great job swinging that broom. Joe Valla brought Lucas. Lucas seemed to have a good time. And then Clint brought his son Brandon. Landon. I kept calling him Brandon. No wonder he didn't answer.
I wonder he didn't respond.
Part of the old age thing.
It's okay, Rick.
Okay, not Tommy, what's your son's name? Phil. So, and then we had a great Rotarian come from the past. Joe Rusnick showed up and he seemed to enjoy himself. So we had about 7 of us. They did the traditional layout of the breakfast beforehand and then made us lunch for anybody in the future that wants to come and help out. We had 6 or 7 people, and it was, I know a lot of people have already done this in the past. Joe, there's the crew. Joe Rusnick, for people that don't know, he was a past president, great guy. Lucas is wearing his Cavs shirt, proud. That was before we lost 4-0, but, so, yeah, great time, and thanks to those people that came and helped.
The Cavs, they made it to the playoffs. Come on, guys, they were the 2nd best in the nation. Gail Royster has an announcement.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning, Gail.
And thank you, President Catherine. As usual, we end our Rotary year with a celebratory dinner, and it's at the Hilton Garden Inn. It's when we thank those who have participated above and beyond for the current Rotary year and welcome and induct our new board and officers into their new positions for the next Rotary year. So there is a clipboard right now. Where is the clipboard? Please, it's in the back. It's moving that way when you're finished. And, or you can email me. Either way, let me know when you're coming, if you're coming, excuse me. And then, remember, there's no meeting the last Wednesday of the month. We do not meet here in the morning, Tom told him. And it is the 27th, the last Wednesday. 6 p.m. Hilton Garden Inn. By popular demand, basically the same menu that we had for the gala, which everybody was thrilled with. So we're changing the dessert a little bit, make it a little lighter. So anyway, that's it. Hope you are all there. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. And for our speaker, real quick, I just want to tell you that that's not next week. Next week we have a really good speaker also, besides today's speaker. But next week we have the Cleveland Orchestra 50 Years of Blossom Music Center. So don't miss out on next week. The annual dinner's not until the following week, and then we won't have a morning meeting. I'll remind you. This is hard to introduce him with a straight face. I'm sorry. Today is fine day. Ed Sogan.
Whoa, I wonder who that Whoa, look at those.
Thank you very much. I'm dressed for summer. I'm working with one of the downtown men's stores, and Evan and I will be available after the meeting for fashion consulting. I think the ladies call it draping. So we'll be advising you proper attire for the beach, all different types of activities. Chris and Brad will be collecting the dollars, so please get your dollars out. As the rules are, you can be fined up to $5. If you care to donate more, that is greatly appreciated. Today, our cause is the shelter boxes that you may be aware of. The Rotary has partnered with groups across the world to be able to provide shelter, camping stoves, and tools for those people that are displaced by natural disasters. And Guatemala has suffered the eruptions, and are, again, millions of people have been put in the path of this particular tragedy. So this money will be going to the shelter boxes. We do have happy news at the end, so if you're thinking about great things that have happened to you or your family, for a small donation, you can pontificate that in front of our friends here at Rotary. Starting off, no pins and no badges. So if we could raise your hand with your donation, if that would be the case. We appreciate you not wearing your proper attire at this meeting to help with the donations. The next thing, as we're going around, and this is a little disappointing, but Catherine informed me that the Fine Day had to be the second Wednesday. And Jennifer, no disrespect to you, but George Snyder indicated that he did not want to be embarrassed in front of the Cleveland Orchestra speaker next week by my performance. So George, if you would please pay $1 for that misdeed. In the news, a couple things that, again, you know, we're talking, it was a little over a month ago that we had our last one, but a great article in the Hudson Hub Times in regards to the Hudson Schools' financial books are healthy. District receives Auditor of the State Award with distinction. Let's have a nice round of applause. I'm sure many of you read this article, but in the article she says, it's just me. My staff does a wonderful job staying out of my way. I am very proud of my work and my work ethic and my attention to detail. That's pretty cold. Obviously, again, Catherine is spending way too much time at her job and not doing and fulfilling her obligations as Rotarian president, so another $1 for you. That was a biggie right there. As usual, Mayor David Basil, nice picture at the meeting. He's got his Hudson pin, but I do not see the Rotary pin. David, $1 fine for you. And a big one here, Jay, outstanding job. I think you and Gail were doing the publicity on this, but a big spread in the hub about our gala. And we have several people to recognize here. Where's Jay? I do not see the Fine Masters picture in here, so please pay $1.
You were holding a Steeler football.
No, $1.
I think it should be $2. I spared you.
Actually, it was a very nice picture that was taken, but obviously not suitable for print. Ron Strobel with the auction car. Ron, beautiful car. He told me it was a Corvette, but it was not. I did drive it around for about a week and a half before I took it back to the Ron Stitzer. Laura Gasborough and Laura Jones are prominently right up there in the top picture with no Sue Carter, their buddy, so Sue, pay $1 for that one. I think you gave your tickets, right? Yeah. That was really nice, then you get fined for it, it's terrible. Evan and Michelle, where's Evan? Very lovely picture of you two with Liz. Pay $1. Davey and Heidi Schwighofer, where's David? Okay, $1. Beautiful picture right there, suitable for framing. And Chris Parker, pay $1. And don't take it out of the pile that you had. Our host and hostess, Ron and Gail, another great picture. We won't tag Ron again. We'll get you later there, Ron. But Gail, you can pay for both of you. Joe Boyzel is not here, is
How
he?
nice is that?
Okay, Joe did a great job with that. And another Joe Avella and Lucas are in the picture there. Joe, I saw you sneak in. He's in the back. Brad, if you could collect $1 from him, please. Okay, Memorial Day Parade. We're moving on. Ron Strobel. Now you can pay your fine. He had his beautiful pickup truck in mint condition once again, the old farm truck hauling our scholarship winners. And unfortunately, Ron was in a bit of a hurry. He was honking his horn the entire parade. He was mumbling something about having to get to a picnic. And so pay $1 for that one. That's not acceptable. Jim Lang, who's not here, but he was not marching with the Rotary, so he will be fined at the next meeting. Joe Boyzel on his motorcycle, once again with training wheels. Well, Dan Williams is not here. Is he on another trip? I think he's in Tibet or where's he at? Machu Picchu, or I mean, he goes all over the world. And Bill Woolridge and David Basil in their cars during the parade, no Rotary pin. Bill, since Stan's here, pay $1 for him too. All right, was just mentioned, where's Rich? Oh, he's way in the back there. Rich, Camp Manitowoc swimming pool session. With those people that worked at that, please stand up. Brad is already standing. Rich, who else was in there?
Joe,
Clinton,
Bella.
Joe. Great group. Let's have a nice round of applause for these people. Collect $1 from each of them because they're making us feel bad. The quote from Rich, he scheduled this when I couldn't attend. The quote, watching Ed work is like watching paint dry. Pay another $1 there. That's pretty cool. Work session last Saturday was just mentioned again. You know, Ron Strobel and the gang did a great job. The quote from Ron, all Ed wants to do is eat donuts. That's why I wasn't invited. So Ron, that's another $1 for you on that.
Wow. Man.
Gladly help, but again, wasn't asked. Speaking of Ron and Gail, their leadership in regards to the gala and the committee, again, I know that you all realize what a important project this is for our Rotary and the amount of hard work that goes into this. This preparation is kind of like the Macy's parade. It's 12 months a year almost in regards to doing this, but if the entire committee could stand up and get recognized in regards to the great job that you did. Once again, this is the lifeblood of the Hudson Rotary. This effort allows Rotary to financially support many gifts and grants throughout the course of the year, and without this, again, we would be a very minor player in Hudson, and because of their efforts, again, this is has been a fantastic last few years, exceptional in regards to the amount of money, and no fine for that one because, again, it would be counterproductive. They might not do it next year. And I think it was, the pledge was 4 more years, I believe. 4 more years. Okay. Tom Tobin was at his doctor, and he told his doctor he was addicted to Twitter. And his doctor replied, "I don't follow you." For that one. Joe Boyles was not here, but I will repeat this story. He was going to an appointment in downtown Hudson, and he drove around the block about 10 times. He could not find a spot, so he finally parked in the no parking zone. And he put a note under the windshield wipers that said, "I have circled the block 10 times. If I don't park here, I'll miss my appointment. Forgive us our trespasses." When he returned, he found a citation from a police officer that said, "I've circled this block for the last 10 years. If I don't give you a ticket, I'll lose my job. Lead us not into temptation." Bad girls table over here, and I don't know why you're sitting there. These people, and Liz is over here on the outskirts. You're included in that, Sue. You're in on this too, Gail. You're all part of this bad girls table. Overheard at the table this morning, and again, I've got kind of rabbit ears. I can pick up all this stuff because of my tremendous hearing. A member had a tiff with her husband. She called her mom and said, "He fought with me again. I'm coming home to live with you." Her mother said, "No, darling. He must pay for his mistakes. I'm coming to live with you." All the ladies over here. The bad boys table over here. Jay, don't move. Jay, don't try to get up out of that seat. Once again, I will not use the name of this particular individual, but let's say that.
But we know it's Kelly.
He's been having a little marital strife. They went to counseling last week, and his wife went into a tirade, listing every problem they've had in their marriage over the last 35 years. On, an entire laundry list of unmet needs she has endured. Finally, after allowing this, the therapist got up, walked around his desk. After asking the wife to stand up, he embraced and kissed her passionately as her husband watched with raised eyebrows. The woman shut up and quietly sat down. The therapist turned to this individual and said, this is what your wife needs at least 3 times a week. Can you do this? His response, well, I can drop her off on Mondays and Wednesdays. And I'm off on Friday. Okay. This week, again, I'm trying to dumb down my questions because of Brad is $1.
And yourself.
This week's contest. Again, we divide the room in half. It isn't quite fair, but this half against this half. And Chris, you've got your group first. We'll go on this side. The question will be asked. You have 5 seconds for a response. The buzzer will ring, and then the fines will be paid. If you get the right answer, they pay. Get the wrong answer, you pay. Why don't calculus majors throw parties? Bad. Because you can never drink and derive. That was a softball there. Hey, a buck over on this side. Okay. All right, this one's easy. On this side, what do you call a parade of rabbits hopping backwards? That, a receding hairline. $1. Andy, get that, open the wallet, because I saw some moths fly out of there. Okay, back over here, and I know you guys are going to get this one. Rich, pay attention. Now, you're gabbing over there with Evan, and you're not paying attention. Why did the chicken go to the seance? Back to get to the other side. Buck, another buck over here, please.
I think the orchestra would be embarrassed by that.
Certainly not the national park. Okay, all right, the last one, and again, this one is, Dan, you got this one. You're all over it. What sits at the bottom of the sea and twitches? That, a nervous wreck.
You're going to be trying to remember that one. Oh, I'm going to try to remember some of these.
Okay, we got a bunch of birthdays.
This is getting worse every
Gail Royster, June 7th, once again celebrating her 39th birthday. Evan McCauley.
Whoa.
Wishes he was 39. He was June 10th, correct, Evan?
Yes.
Okay, you got Bob Cramp, birthday boy. $1 for every year of your birth there, big fella. Spouse's birthdays, Sue Strobel was on the 6th. And Phil Tobin will be 85 on the 24th. All right. So let's take a big happy birthday, especially for Phil. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Phil. Happy birthday to you.
Yeah.
You all remember those stories of Phil and Jimmy and the playpen. That was the beginning of the WWF. Okay, one kind of the last big one here, but we have Rotary anniversaries. Max Wendell, 16. $2 for each of those, that's 32 bucks. And Kelly Brennan, 19. He's looking for his 20-year pin next year. Evan, 20-year pin next year. He's not paying attention again. Evan, pay $1 for not paying attention. Okay, this one's wedding anniversaries. I would like everyone to stand up. This is very brief. Please stand up. Unfortunately, this individual is not with us today, but if your wedding anniversary is on that's June 10th, 1950, please sit down. That's Gene and Joe Zabatowski's 68th wedding anniversary. Let's have a nice round of applause. Everybody take a box for Joe and Gene. Happy news. Happy news. Do we have any happy news out there? There's got to be some happy news. Boy, there's some happy people here. Huh? Anything good happen? Rich, new Corvette or anything?
No, sir.
Nothing. Okay,
Lynn has one.
I'm having my 31st wedding anniversary this month.
Fantastic. Anybody else? Okay, we're moving. Oh, Andy.
Unfortunately, I was not here for the last couple of weeks. I know nobody probably noticed that, but that was because we were in Scotland for 2 weeks drinking whiskey, and also I ran the Edinburgh Marathon with my son, Thad.
I thought it was a little quiet around here.
Exactly.
Okay, my last bit of news is a quote from Andy Rooney, who was a columnist and also a TV personality. I've learned that just one person saying to me, "You've made my day," makes my day. You guys make my day. Thank you.
You gotta love it. It puts a lot of time and preparation into it. We appreciated it. And next we have George Snyder who's going to introduce our speaker, who I hope is entertained by our fine day.
She hasn't left yet.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning, George.
Part 2 of our series this month on summer fun takes place quite literally in our own backyard. In the late 1960s, 2 area congressmen, Ralph Regula from Stark County and John Seiderling from Akron, began work to protect a greenbelt along the Cuyahoga River and its towpath trail, protected from urban sprawl. After several failed attempts, those far-sighted representatives convinced Congress and President Ford in 1974 to establish 33,000 acres of farmland and forest as the Cuyahoga Valley National Preservation Area. National Recreation Area. This was later renamed the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and it is Ohio's only national park, and it stretches from Akron's north side area to Independence, some 30 miles to the north. Chances are you know some, but probably not all, of the National Park's many attractions, many of which are in plain view and others off the beaten path. Speaking to us today, particularly about those that are off the beaten path, is Jenny Vassarelli, who is the park's Chief of Interpretation, Education, and Visitor Services. A native of Maryland, she has worked here for over 20 years. In her present position, she is responsible for creating learning and interpretive services that help visitors enjoy and appreciate the park from the vantage points of natural history, science, culture, and education. She manages partnerships, visitor centers, exhibits, publications, volunteer programs, education, and ranger-led programs. Before coming to our urban park, she worked in the Darling National Wildlife Refuge in Florida and the Badlands National Park in South Dakota. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me now in giving a warm Rotary welcome to Jenny Vassarelli.
Hi everyone, it's really nice to be here today. So, I don't want to put people on the spot and ask who hasn't been to the park, so raise your hand if you have been to the park. I figured most of you would raise your hand because really it is 5 minutes from here. So my job today is to really provide an orientation to the park with some trip planning and invite you to come to the park. And I hope that you will pick out 1 or 2 places that maybe you've never been before to try something new. So if it's your first time to the park, you can go anywhere. If you've been to the park before, think of something new that you're seeing today. If you need more information, I did bring our Valley Guide. We just recently switched to this newspaper format. It replaces our older schedule of events. This format
is a little bit more geared towards the first-time visitor. It has a little bit more trip planning information. We switched to this format because we're getting more and more out-of-town visitors who are really looking for basic tourist information, but I think it's helpful for the local community too. It does include a listing of programs in it as well, so it's not completely different from our former schedule, but hope you find that useful. All right, so here we go. So just, a little background. George already did it. I'm supposed to point this to the computer. It's not going.
We'll back up. Don't worry.
What's that?
Oh, James will help.
All right, so, okay, so why don't we just flip through these first few slides. We were established by Congress in 1974. Our name was changed to a national park in 2000. We tried to forget our old names. It's very confusing. The public didn't understand it. All right, next slide. And then, again, we're 33,000 acres. Anyone know what other national park is 33,000 acres? That's a very obscure question, but some of the questions I heard earlier today were pretty obscure too, so I think it's okay. Because usually when you think national park, you think of big parks, million-acre parks like Yellowstone, but there are some other kind of more land-based national parks that are more in the public view than Cuyahoga that are 33,000 acres, and the answer is Acadia National Park in Maine. But when you think about, did you know? And you didn't say. Anyway, when you think about parks in local areas, we are really blessed to have wonderful park systems in this area, county parks, but they tend to be smaller. They tend, to be, a large county park is 500 acres. So when you think about 33,000 acres in a metropolitan area, that really is a large land base and lets a lot of things happen. So that is what we're about. Just a little bit about what Cuyahoga Valley National Park is. I like to point out our legislation because I think it is rather interesting. Our park purpose was established by Congress in the bill that Cyberling and Regula got through Congress. So we're here for public use and enjoyment, all the resources of the park, but the one that is named in our legislation is the Cuyahoga River. So we're really about the river and the valley it created and everything in it that we protect. Go to the next slide. And then what I also really like is our legislation recognizes the fact we're in an urban environment. So we talk about our importance in an urban environment. Recreation and education are in our purpose because those are important in an urban environment. We talk about having fun. Recreation is fun, but I think recreation is also important. Think about the role of recreation in your own life, the health and well-being that comes by having access to great places for recreation, and realize that those really are an important part of life. So we like to think we're more than just a fun place to go, but we're an important part of your life. So next slide. Just one more thing though, we're not just a national park, we're a national park within a national heritage area. The Ohio and Erie Canalway was established by Congress in 1996 to really extend the types of offerings you find in the national park beyond the boundaries of the national park. So when you want to go exploring, don't just look at the park's website, look at the heritage area's website, the Ohio and Erie Canalway.com. They actually just updated their website. Very worth going to. There's many more wonderful destinations within the heritage area in Cleveland and Akron and Point South. And I'm not going to go into much detail in those today, but just want to point you in the direction of exploring the heritage area as well. So again, what is Cuyahoga National Park all about? It's a valley, kind of simple-minded, but sometimes I think we forget to think about the valley. The bottomlands of the valley is where you find the transportation resources. I'll be talking about the Ohio and Erie Canal, the railroad, Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, go in this transportation corridor between Cleveland and Akron that is created by the valley. Next slide. We are also the valley walls and tributaries. The edge of the valley have been highly dissected by ravines, and the trail system wanders through these ravines, and around every corner you get a different view.
every spot in some ways is off the beaten path and special because every time you turn a corner, you see something new, and I highly recommend trying any trail in the trail system you haven't tried before. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Next slide. And then of course we have the upland areas, the closest to the here being the Virginia Kendall Ledges area, the highest point in the park. Next slide. All right, so how do you experience the valley? Trails are part of it. Our trail system is continuously growing, and we're continuously adding new activities. The East Rim Trail System is our newest. It started off as a 2-mile trail system. It's growing into a 10-mile trail system for mountain biking. Has anyone tried that here yet? It's not a beginner mountain bike trail, let me just say. Bedford Reservation, which is also in the valley, has more beginning mountain bike trails. And then the other trail we are working on right now is developing the Cuyahoga River Water Trail. For years we were telling people, don't go on the river, water quality is too bad. Now we're starting to say to people, you can go on the river, do it at your own risk. You really need to know what you're doing because there still are water quality issues. We're not yet maintaining the river for recreation. There's down trees and that kind of thing. But if you go down to the valley and look at the river this time of year, you'll see kayakers on it. It is being discovered, and that is something we're preparing to welcome the public to more actively in the coming years. Next slide. Another way to connect with the park is by train. I know George through his volunteer work with the train, which has been incredibly important to us. Lots of ways to experience the park by train, though. It's not just taking an excursion. You can load your bike on the train and bike the towpath in one direction and take the train back in the other direction. You can visit sites like Hill Farm and Village by train. You can discover the stories of the valley by listening to an audio tour on the train. Next slide. The road, when you're trying to figure out how to drive the road, I think one of the hardest parts of our national park is we don't own the road system. So when you're driving through the park, you feel like you're on local roads. You don't always realize you're in a park, and it's because we don't own the road system. But the Ohio and Erie Canalway Byway, the National Scenic Byway, which you see marked with the signs here, is a driving route that you can use to navigate the valley. And the map you see here is in the Valley Guide too, to help you find different locations in the park. Next slide. And then I was talking about discovering by river. Imagine that being you in the not too distant future. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then programs and activities. Again, another pitch for the Valley Guide, which lists them all. We offer all kinds of programs. Some are ranger guided, some are led by our partners, some are self-guided. For any of you who have children in your lives, one that I really like to point out is our Junior Ranger programs. You see the Junior Ranger booklet on this slide. We also have little Junior Ranger cards, which are for pre-readers, kids who aren't reading yet. It gives you, ideas of fun activities to do with kids. You can pick up these activities in our visitor center, and it really can help make, a visit to the park that you're doing with children a lot more fun. I also highly recommend our Ranger guided Junior Ranger programs. They're really, we have fabulous rangers, great at engaging kids in the park. Next slide. And then partner venues. So our boundaries are 33,000 acres of land. The National Park Service only owns about 20,000 of those acres. There are a lot of other landowners that really contribute to the valley experience. Hill Farm and Village, Blossom Music Center, the ski areas, Bedford and Brexville Reservation of Cleveland Metro Parks, Hampton Hills, O'Neill Woods, Furnace Run, and Deep Block Quarry of Summit Metro Parks are all part of the National Park experience. And so when you're going to those places, you are also going to the National Park. Next slide. One more piece of advice about trip planning. If you need more help in planning a trip, or you're trying to talk to your friends and neighbors and family about coming to the park, what we're doing right now, because the park is so complicated, for first-time visitors, we're saying, hey, go to our visitor center. Right now, our visitor center is Boston Store Visitor Center, which is a canal boat building museum. The public is not coming for a canal boat building museum. They are coming for an overview of the park. So there's a little mismatch in what happens there. If you've been down in Boston lately, I actually don't have a slide of it, you'll see a big building up in the air. Has anyone seen that? Yes. So what is a big building doing up in the air? We through our friends group, the Conservancy for Cuyahoga Valley National Park, are working on a new visitor center project. That big building up in the air is a historic building associated with the Cleveland Akron Bag Company, which is one of 2 paper mills that were in the valley. We're rehabilitating it to be our visitor center. It's getting a completely new foundation. That's why it's up in the air. It's been kind of up in the air a little longer than we expected because we discovered bedrock was closer than our geotechnical surveys told us, so we had to redesign the foundation. So we're running a little behind, but we'll catch up. Anyway, next slide. So what I'm going to do for the rest of this is go through some of the stories of the park and share places to go to learn the story. So next slide. There are a lot of stories in the park. There's many things to discover. Just a little inventory, a few snapshots. You know, a park that protects over 400 historic structures has a lot of history. Next slide. You know, a park that has 1,500 wetlands has a lot of natural discovery. So every corner of the park there's something to discover. So what are our different stories? One is about transportation. You know, the Cuyahoga River created this transportation corridor. American Indians used it, the Cuyahoga River, and then the Ohio and Erie Canal was really the first part of the nation's first transportation infrastructure when this country was a young country. It was a very successful transportation route. Akron and Cleveland really owe some of their early growth to the Ohio and Erie Canal. You know, they are canal towns extraordinaire in some ways. So next slide. You can go to the next one too. You can see this transportation network that the canal was part of. It wasn't just canals in Ohio, but it was canals that created an interstate transportation system. So that is one of the things that we celebrate. Next slide. Places to go, Canal Exploration Center at the north end of the park in Valley View is a Canal Heritage Center. We have lots of kind of fun, hands-on activities, very family-friendly place to go. And then, of course, the Towpath Trail is our anchor spine through the park. It's a 20-mile bicycling trail and walking. One of the things you will see soon is we have a lot of wayside exhibits, which are exhibits that explain what you see as you go along in the park. We've had the same exhibits out since the trail opened in 1993. They are being completely replaced this summer, and I think they'll be very exciting, so look for those coming soon. Next thing. Of course, the railway is part of the transportation history. When you're on Cuyahoga Valley Scenic Railroad, you can go to the next slide, you are on a transportation system that is following a very historic route. So 1880, the Valley Railway opened. The rail line itself has not changed much, even though, of course, it's now diesel engines, except when the steam trains show up in September. Next slide. Living on the land, you know, the nice thing about the Cuyahoga Valley is with our long history, we have many different historic resources, and it's very easy to see kind of the relationships between people and the land. Next slide. Especially, you know, we're trying to do a little bit more to reveal our American Indian history. It's very prevalent in the valley, but it's not a well-told story because American Indians were removed from Ohio and a lot of their stories disappeared. But in the Towpath Waysides, for example, one of the sites that we're marking is this site called South Park, which was in the north end of the park. It was a farming community associated with American Indian cultivation of the fertile Cuyahoga River bottomlands. Next slide. Settlement is a big part of it. We really focus on cultural landscapes. So it's not always buildings that you can go into, but when you're driving a valley, getting a sense of the rural character of the valley marked by historic buildings. The one in the lower corner, though, is Stanford House, which is operated by our Friends group. They do whole house rentals of that facility as well as overnight accommodations. And I hope everyone recognizes Brandywine Falls. Next slide. So farming is a big part of our story of living on the land. In the 19th century, the Cuyahoga Valley was a major farming community, and we, next slide, continue farming in the valley today through the Countryside Initiative, where we have about 11 properties that we lease to farmers, and they make experiences in the park. Track Farm on 303 is probably the closest one to here. You can stop by his farm, and he has some food vending sometimes from his front yard. And then on Saturdays, we have a farmer's market at Howe Meadow that features some of our Countryside Initiative farms. Next slide. And then, recreation is a big part of the valley. Ever since Cleveland and Akron became urban, people have been coming to the valley for recreation. Same things that we're looking for, healthy living that we associate with being outdoors. So canals are one way to do it. Next slide. Over time, many different things. We recently discovered these really interesting plain dealer articles from the turn of the 20th century, promoting people to take the inner urban from Cleveland out into the valley. Next slide. So obviously, Brandywine Falls is a place to go. However, I do not recommend going between 10 and 2 on a weekend. You live locally, you can choose when you go. It's really, if you go there between 10 and 2 on a weekend, you'll discover how many out-of-state people have discovered Cuyahoga Valley National Park. However, you'll do it as you're circling the parking lot and not finding a parking lot. So, next slide. Again, county parks have been in the valley a lot longer than we have. This is Brexville Reservation, operated by Cleveland Metro Parks. I really love Brexville and Bedford Reservation, which is where I personally go a lot, because the forests have had longer to mature. All of our forest here is second growth. So much farming, lumbering. This is a very denuded area, and the forests that have really matured, have re-matured, have become very lovely. Next slide. Civilian Conservation Corps and the Works Progress Administration worked in the valley in the 1930s. Everything I'm showing here is work that they did in the Virginia Kendall area of the park. The tent city that you see down there was very near Happy Days Lodge. That's where Camp 576 was based. Next slide. So again, as you go through Virginia Kendall Park, which is one of our popular trail systems, you're walking on a historic landscape created by the Civilian Conservation Corps. Their sense of what makes nature beautiful helps define that area. Next slide. And again, a little off the beaten path, but very close to here, Kendall Lake was dammed by a salt run was dammed to create Kendall Lake by the Civilian Conservation Corps. There's a nice 1-mile loop around that lake that I highly recommend. Next slide. Okay, natural diversity. People associate national parks with nature. We're one of them. You can go to the next slide. And our ecosystems are so diverse in part because our land is so rugged, and then there's water in all kinds of surprising places, including, on the slopes, creating wetlands, and that adds to the specialness of, kind of no matter where you go, you're going to find something interesting and surprising. Next slide. Beaver Marsh, probably one of our more popular areas. It's on the Towpath Trail north of Ira Trailhead. Again, a place to go morning and evening, kind of not in the height of the recreation day. It's a great place to actually enjoy sunrise and sunset. Watch for wildlife. River otters, for example, have showed up in this area. Kind of in the upper left corner, just a sense of the natural diversity of that spot from these slides. Next slide. This is the before and after of the Beaver Marsh, by the way. Did anyone ever need spare parts for a Volkswagen before the national park was established? You know, that's what that area was known for. You know, it had a great reputation as an auto salvage yard when you needed spare parts. And it creates also a great contrasting view of what you see there today. You know, beavers, people did some of the work of removing the salvage yard, but beavers did a lot to create the wetland. Next slide. But again, off the beaten path, getting away from crowds, places like the Oak Hill Trail system, which in some ways is directly opposite the valley of where we are right now, off of Oak Hill Major Road, is a nice place to go. Next slide. And then we also like to just remind ourselves that this national park has a very strong contrast, and that is the history of the river that flows through the park. Next slide. Cuyahoga River flammable, everyone right knows what we're talking about. And you know, 50 years ago, the 1969 fire had not happened. We're coming up on the 50th anniversary next year. But people's impression of that fire were one of catastrophe. You can go to the next slide, by the way. Of something bad that happened. And when you contrast to what the national park is today, you know, hold that contrasting image in your mind wherever you are in the park, and I think it makes the wow of the recovery and what, you know, we have made happen because this community decided we didn't want a future that looked like the past. By the way, when I talk about this past of being representative of a 1969 fire, this is the image used for the 1969 fire. Anyone know what year this photo was taken?
It says 1952.
Oh yeah, it says in the slides. Yes, this was a fire in 1952. The Cuyahoga River fire burned a whole bunch of times. The 1969 fire was the last. It was actually a fairly small fire. Photographers did not get out in time. However, what happened, next slide, is, this is where it took place, a few miles north of the park in the area of the steel mills. Next slide. The reason this fire is so well known is not because of the fire itself captured a lot of attention, but the day after the fire, Carl Stokes, remember he was mayor of Cleveland for 4 years and then he went on to a media career in New York, so he was a very good spokesperson. He led a pollution tour of Cleveland, and the Plain Dealer had one of the earliest environmental reporters, the woman standing next to him, Betty Karolick. So our fire made the news, it made the local news, and then the story got picked up by the national news. It got picked up by Time magazine. The August 1969 issue of Time magazine was well read. This is just the quirk of history sometimes because Teddy Kennedy's Chappaquiddick incident was the feature article. So people were buying it, flipping through it, and seeing the Cuyahoga River fire. And that image that I showed you, that 1952 image of a 1969 fire, is in environmental history books all over the place. So, you know, it gives our contrasting image. I hope everyone likes the other images I've shown a lot better. Next slide. And then places to go, you know, if you really want to experience nature and the river, one of the places we recommend is Station Road Bridge Trailhead, which is in Brecksville. You go a few miles north, next slide, from the trailhead. You can look across the river and see an active bald eagle nest where they've nested for over 10 years now. And you can watch people fish from the river. You can go fishing yourself, and you can see what people are catching. That is a non-native fish, so things are not perfect. It's a steelhead. However, you know, catching big, beautiful fish in the Cuyahoga River is not something people were thinking about a generation ago. Next slide. Again, the one other big thing that's happening, there's a dam there at Station Road that was originally built to water the Ohio and Erie Canal. That dam will be removed within the next year or so to keep improving the health of the Cuyahoga River and have it become a free-flowing river. So those are the stories and some places to go. If you want to keep up with us, you can follow us
on social media. I highly recommend doing it too if you're a regular park visitor, because we announce closures and that kind of thing through social media. So it's just a great way to keep up with us. And with that, I think I have a few minutes for questions.
When are the bridges?
Can you use a mic, please?
When are the bridges going to be finished?
Which bridges? We have a few bridge projects.
There's like four of them on the towpath trail.
Yes, so we have two major bridge projects going on right now. There are 4 bridges being replaced on the towpath. The one at Boston Store is replaced, so that section has been completed and reopened. There are bridges kind of south of Peninsula, between Peninsula and Hunt House, that are under construction. We had hoped they'd be done by the end of June. They're running a little late from what I hear, so weather has not been on our side, so it looks like that's going to be sometime in July. Good place to go. Again, our website or social media will keep you up to date. The other major bridge construction going on is Old Carriage Trail Bridges. That is a trail system in Sagamore Hills, which has been, the bridges have been closed for almost a decade. It took us a long time to get funding to deal with that challenge. And right now, there are construction closures going on that trail. The poor condition bridges are being removed right now. We're going to replace one of the long span bridges on that trail and then reroute the trail so it can be completely back in public domain again. So, next question.
I was just going to say, we love going there. We've been going there for years. But one question, when you're walking the trail, the bicyclers are not always the most courteous people there. And is there some way that maybe remind them that they should share the path with the walkers?
Yes, and we try to do a lot to remind people about trail etiquette. We have a Safe as Sound program, and where we have volunteers out on the trail stopping people and reminding them about trail etiquette. But I would use this as a moment to remind people about trail etiquette too. You know, the towpath trail is a shared trail, and it is important that bicycles yield to pedestrians and give an audible sound when they're passing. And a piece of advice I like to remind people is, you know, in the summer, families are on the trail. Kids are unpredictable on bicycles. I think it's an important time to realize that their experience of having a safe visit is really important, and cyclists need to be aware, you know, of other people and not trying to race through. So, fortunately, a lot of the fastest cyclists go on the road, which also means when you're driving, be careful about road bikes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, and for anyone who didn't get one of these, there's some extra ones and I put them on the front table. They've got a lot of resources in it if you get it too. To wrap up today's meeting, I want to thank our greeters, Bill Warburton and Matt LaFountain, and thank our audiovisual crew, Dan Rich, Tom Page, Tom Tobin, James Field, and Ron Barnhouse. And our Rotobuck today is $13 and the jackpot's $161. Yes, Jay?
Catherine, may I have the newer inductees, I think 5 of them are here, in front of the fireplace right after the meeting.
Okay,
for
so
a
the
photo.
new inductees or new members,
Right.
he would like to take a picture of you in front of the fireplace, please.
Together.
Together. And would you please pour Brian number? Sure. I'll look at the last 4 numbers.
If I can see it,
Here, I'll-
let's see.
Got it.
6324.
Oh. What a surprise.
6324.
Jim Hackney.
Oh my God.
As he's coming up, I want to remind everyone there's a board of directors meeting immediately following this meeting. Sorry. And in closing, I just remind everybody this club is as good as it is because we all do it together. We're better together.
All right.
Oh, do you really?